The equation had been scrawled on the whiteboard for 3 months, mocking every MIT graduate, Harvard PhD, and Silicon Valley prodigy who walked through the doors of Al-Mansouri Ventures in downtown Boston. Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansouri watched from his corner office as another team of consultants from McKinsey stared at the mathematical puzzle, their expensive suits wrinkled from hours of frustrated calculation, their confidence evaporating like morning mist over the Charles River. "We've $50 million, Khalid had announced at the company's quarterly meeting, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had built his renewable energy empire. "To whoever can solve this equation and explain its real-world application." The room had buzzed with excitement, then settled into the familiar rhythm of brilliant minds hitting an immovable wall. But it wasn't the consultants or the venture capitalists who caught Khalid's attention that Tuesday evening in November. It was the young man emptying trash cans in the conference room, moving with the efficient invisibility of someone accustomed to being overlooked. Miguel Santos, 19 years old, son of the building's night janitor, working his way through community college one garbage bag at a time. Miguel paused at the whiteboard, his dark eyes scanning the complex equation that had stumped some of the brightest minds in America. Khalid watched through the glass partition as the young man's lips moved silently, his finger tracing patterns in the air. Then, without hesitation, Miguel picked up a marker and began writing. The solution flowed across the board in elegant strokes, each step building logically on the last. But it wasn't just the mathematics that made Khalid's breath catch. It was the additional notation Miguel added at the bottom, a practical application that revealed he understood not just the numbers, but their meaning. "Excuse me," Khalid called out, stepping into the conference room. Miguel spun around, marker still in hand, his face flushing with the particular panic of someone caught where they don't belong. "I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't supposed to. I was just cleaning and I saw." Miguel's voice carried the slight accent of someone who had learned English as a second language, each word carefully chosen. "What's your name?" "Miguel Santos." "My father, he's the janitor here. I help him sometimes after my classes at Bunker Hill Community College." Khalid approached the whiteboard, studying Miguel's work. The solution was not only correct but elegant, revealing insights that had eluded teams of experts. More importantly, Miguel had identified the equation's application to sustainable energy distribution, the very problem Khalid's company had been struggling to solve for their next-generation solar grid project. "How did you know this relates to energy distribution?" Miguel's eyes lit up despite his nervousness. "I'm studying electrical engineering. This equation, it's about optimizing power flow through networks with variable resistance. But the beautiful part is how it accounts for energy loss in real time, which means you could adjust distribution patterns to maximize efficiency across an entire grid." Khalid felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that echoed his own journey from curious child in Riyadh to renewable energy pioneer. "Miguel, I need to ask you something important. Are you familiar with the challenge I posted 3 months ago? The $50 million equation. Everyone in Boston knows about it. My professors at school, they've been trying to solve it too. And what do you think about the prize?" Miguel was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from the whiteboard to Khalid's face. "With respect, sir, I think the real prize isn't the money. It's what you could do with a solution like this. If you could optimize energy distribution the way this equation suggests, you could bring reliable power to communities that have never had it. You could make renewable energy accessible to people like," he paused, "like my family." That night, Khalid sat in his Beacon Hill townhouse, the city lights of Boston spreading out below his study window like a circuit board made of stars. Miguel's words echoed in his mind, but it was the young man's perspective that truly haunted him. In 3 months of watching brilliant minds attack his equation, no one had mentioned the communities that could benefit from the solution. They had seen dollar signs and patent opportunities, but Miguel had seen people, His phone buzzed with a text from his business partner in Dubai. The board is asking about the equation challenge. Any progress? Khalid stared at the message, thinking about the press coverage the challenge had generated. Forbes had called it a publicity stunt. TechCrunch had speculated about the equation's connection to Al Mansouri's upcoming IPO. The Wall Street Journal had interviewed economists about the psychological impact of large monetary prizes on innovation. But none of them had asked the question that now kept Khalid awake. What happened to the communities that needed the solution while the brilliant minds competed for the prize? The next morning, Khalid arrived at his office to find Miguel's father, Carlos Santos, waiting nervously in the lobby. Carlos was a small man with calloused hands and tired eyes, wearing the navy blue uniform of the building's maintenance staff. Mr. Al-Mansouri, "Sir, I need to apologize for my son. He told me what happened last night. He shouldn't have touched your whiteboard. I raised him better than that." "Mr. Santos, please sit down." Khalid gestured to the leather chairs in his office's seating area. Miguel didn't do anything wrong. In fact, he did something remarkable. Carlos looked confused, his hands fidgeting with the cap he'd removed upon entering. "Sir, your son solved an equation that has stumped some of the most educated people in America. More than that, he understood its implications in a way that could change how we think about energy access. Miguel, he's always been good with numbers. Even as a little boy in El Salvador, before we came here, he would help the neighbors figure out their bills, their taxes. But sir, we're not educated people. I clean buildings. Miguel, he's trying to better himself, but we don't have money for fancy schools." Khalid leaned forward, studying Carlos's face. "Tell me about Miguel's education." "He graduated high school here in Boston. Good grades, but we couldn't afford university. He's taking classes at the community college, working nights to pay for it. He wants to be an engineer, like the men who design the buildings I clean. What would you say if I told you Miguel had just earned $50 million? Carlos's face went pale. "Sir, I don't understand. 3 months ago, I offered $50 million to anyone who could solve a specific mathematical equation. Last night, your son solved it." The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sounds of Boston traffic and the hum of the building's ventilation system. Carlos's hands trembled slightly as he processed the information. $50 million, he whispered. That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's happening, but Mr. Santos, I want to discuss something with you and Miguel. I want to talk about what we do with this solution. That afternoon, Khalid sat across from Miguel and Carlos in a small diner in East Boston, the kind of place where coffee refills were automatic and the waitresses called everyone Hon. The contrast between this vinyl booth and his usual boardroom meetings wasn't lost on him, but something about the setting felt more honest, more real. "Miguel," Khalid began, "I want you to understand something. The equation you solved isn't just an academic exercise. It's the key to a project that could revolutionize how we deliver renewable energy to underserved communities." Miguel nodded, his notebook open on the table, pen ready. "The distributed grid optimization problem. I've been thinking about it all night. What if I told you that instead of just giving you $50 million, I wanted to offer you something else? A chance to be part of implementing the solution you found?" Carlos looked between his son and Khalid, confusion evident on his face. "I don't understand what you're asking." "I'm asking Miguel to join my company, not as an intern or an entry-level employee, but as a partner in developing this technology. The $50 million would be his starting equity stake." Miguel's pen stopped moving. "You want me to help build the system?" "I want you to lead the team that builds it. But Miguel, I need you to understand what that means. This isn't just about the technology. It's about the communities that will use it. It's about making sure that the benefits reach the people who need them most, not just the ones who can afford them." The conversation was interrupted by Miguel's phone buzzing with a text. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's my professor from school. Someone leaked that I solved your equation. There are reporters outside our apartment building. Khalid felt a familiar knot form in his stomach. He'd seen what media attention could do to people unprepared for its intensity. Miguel, Carlos, I think we need to talk about what happens next. Within hours, the story had exploded across social media. Janitor's son solves billionaire's 50-minute math challenge, trending on Twitter. News vans lined up outside the Santos family's modest apartment in East Boston. Miguel's community college professors were giving interviews about his exceptional abilities. Financial analysts were speculating about the implications for Al Mansouri Ventures' stock price. But it was the interview that Carlos gave to a local Spanish-language news station that cut deepest. Standing outside his apartment building, still wearing his work uniform, he spoke about his son's dreams, about the sacrifices their family had made to come to America, about the hope that education could lift them out of poverty. "My son, he is smart, yes," Carlos said in accented English, tears visible in his eyes. "But more than smart, he has good heart. He sees this equation. He doesn't think about money. He thinks about people who need electricity, who need power for their homes, their schools. That is the son I raised." Watching the interview from his office, Khalid felt something crystallize in his mind. The media was treating Miguel's story as a feel-good tale of American opportunity, but they were missing the deeper truth. Miguel's solution was valuable precisely because he understood what it meant to live without access to reliable power, to struggle with systems designed for people with resources he'd never had. That evening, Khalid drove to East Boston, navigating past the news vans and curious neighbors to knock on the Santos family's door. Miguel answered, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Mr. Al Mansouri, I'm sorry about all this. I never wanted—" "Miguel, can we talk?" "All of us." The Santos family's apartment was small but immaculately clean, filled with the sense of home-cooked food and the sounds of a Spanish-language news program playing softly on an old television. Miguel's mother, Elena, served coffee in mismatched cups while his younger sister, Sofia, did homework at the kitchen table.
"I want to be honest with you about what's happening," Khalid began. "The attention Miguel is receiving, it's going to change your lives whether we want it to or not. The question is how we manage that change." Elena spoke for the first time, her English more hesitant than her husband. "We are simple people, Mr. Al Mansouri.
We don't know about business, about money like this. Mrs. Santos, that's exactly why Miguel's perspective is so valuable. He sees problems that people like me miss because we've never lived them." Miguel leaned forward. "What are you really asking us?" "I'm asking if you're willing to help me build something bigger than just a company. I'm asking if you want to create a model for how technology can serve communities instead of just markets." Over the next 2 hours, Khalid outlined his vision. Al Mansouri Ventures would establish a new division focused on community-centered renewable energy projects. Miguel would lead the technical development while completing his engineering degree through a partnership with MIT. The $50 million would fund not just Miguel's education and equity stake, but a comprehensive program to bring reliable, affordable, renewable energy to underserved communities across the United States. "But here's what I need you to understand," Khalid continued. "This isn't charity. This is business that happens to do good. Miguel's solution makes economic sense because it's more efficient, more sustainable, and more scalable than current approaches. The fact that it also serves communities that have been overlooked by traditional energy companies isn't a side benefit. It's a competitive advantage." Carlos was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "In El Salvador we had a saying, El que no vive para servir, no serve para vivir. He who doesn't live to serve doesn't deserve to live. Miguel, what do you think?" Miguel looked around the table at his family, then back at Khalid. "I think about the kids in my neighborhood who do homework by candlelight when the power goes out. I think about my grandmother in El Salvador who has never had reliable electricity. If this solution can help people like them, Then yes, I want to be part of it. 6 months later, Khalid stood in a community center in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood, watching Miguel explain the new microgrid system to a group of residents. The young man who had once emptied trash cans now commanded the room with quiet confidence, his technical expertise grounded in genuine understanding of the community's needs. The beauty of this system, Miguel was saying, is that it's designed to be community-owned and operated. You're not just consumers of energy, you're partners in producing and managing it. An elderly woman raised her hand. What happens when something breaks? We can't afford expensive repair bills. That's why we've designed the system with local training programs, Miguel replied. Mrs. Johnson, your grandson Marcus is already enrolled in our technical certification program. In 6 months, he'll be qualified to maintain and repair these systems, and he'll have a job that pays well enough to support his family. Khalid felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced that night in the conference room when Miguel first solved the equation. But now he understood that the real solution hadn't been mathematical, it had been human. The Detroit project was the third community microgrid they'd launched, following successful implementations in East Boston and a rural area outside Phoenix. Each project was different, adapted to local needs and resources, but all shared the same fundamental principle: technology designed with and for communities, not imposed upon them. Miguel's phone buzzed with a text, and he glanced at it with a smile. My sister Sophia just got accepted to MIT, he announced to the room. She's going to study environmental engineering. The applause was spontaneous and heartfelt, a celebration not just of Sophia's achievement, but of the possibilities that opened when communities had access to resources and support. After the meeting, Khalid and Miguel walked through the neighborhood, past houses where solar panels gleamed on rooftops and small businesses hummed with reliable power. The transformation wasn't just technological. Property values had stabilized, new businesses had opened, and young people who might have left for opportunities elsewhere were staying to build careers in the emerging green economy. I got a call from the MacArthur Foundation yesterday, Miguel said, as they paused at a corner where a new coffee shop displayed a sign powered by the community microgrid. They want to nominate our community energy model for their award for creative and effective institutions. That's incredible recognition, Khalid replied. Oh, you've earned it. We've earned it, Miguel corrected. This was never just my work. They were interrupted by a young boy on a bicycle who skidded to a stop beside them. Hey, Miguel, my mum wants to know if you're coming to dinner on Sunday. She's making pupusas. Miguel grinned. Tell her I'll be there, Danny. And I'm bringing my friend, Khalid. As the boy pedaled away, Khalid reflected on how much had changed since that November evening when Miguel first picked up a marker in the conference room. The equation had been solved, the $50 million had been invested, and the technology had been deployed. But the real transformation had been more subtle and more profound. Miguel, can I ask you something? That first night, when you solved the equation, what made you write the application note at the bottom? Miguel was quiet for a moment, watching as streetlights began to flicker on, powered by the community grid they'd built together. My father used to tell me that knowledge without purpose is just noise. When I saw that equation, I didn't just see numbers. I saw the possibility of light in dark places, power in powerless communities. I saw my grandmother's face when the electricity finally reached her village. That evening, Khalid sat in his hotel room overlooking the Detroit River, working on a speech he'd been asked to give at the United Nations Climate Summit. The draft on his laptop screen was full of technical specifications and economic projections, the kind of presentation he'd given dozens of times before. But Miguel's words kept echoing in his mind. Knowledge without purpose is just noise. He deleted the entire document and started over. 2 years ago, a young man solved an equation that had stumped some of the brightest minds in America, he began typing. But the real breakthrough wasn't mathematical, it was moral. He reminded me that the most elegant solutions are worthless if they don't serve the people who need them most. The words flowed differently now, less like a technical presentation and more like a conversation about values and vision. He wrote about Miguel's insight, about Carlos's wisdom, about Elena's quiet strength and Sophia's determination. He wrote about communities that had been overlooked by traditional energy companies and the young people who were now building careers in the clean energy economy. But mostly, he wrote about the revelation that had taken him 2 years to fully grasp, that true innovation happens not when brilliant minds solve abstract problems, but when diverse perspectives come together to address real human needs. His phone rang, interrupting his writing. It was Miguel, calling from Boston, where he was finishing his final semester at MIT while managing the Community Energy Division remotely. "Khalid, I wanted you to hear this from me first. Harvard Business School called. They want to create a case study about our community energy model. They're calling it the Santos Solution." Khalid leaned back in his chair, processing the news. Harvard Business School case studies were read by future leaders around the world, shaping how they thought about business and social responsibility. "That's incredible recognition," he said, "though I think they've got the name wrong." "What do you mean?" "This was never just your solution, Miguel. This was a community solution, a family solution, a solution that happened because different kinds of wisdom came together. You know what my father said when I told him about the case study? He said, 'Mijo, the real solution isn't in the books they'll write about us. It's in the lights that stay on in neighborhoods that used to go dark.'" After they hung up, Khalid returned to his speech, but his mind wandered to the upcoming expansion plans. The community energy model was being adapted for implementation in 12 new cities, from rural Alabama to urban Los Angeles. Each location would face unique challenges, but the core principle would remain the same: technology designed with communities, not for them. A year later, Khalid stood in a high school gymnasium in Phoenix, watching Sofia Santos present her senior project to a panel of judges. The young woman who had once done homework at a kitchen table while her brother emptied trash cans now commanded the stage with the same quiet confidence that had made Miguel such an effective community leader. "The next generation of renewable energy systems," Sophia was explaining, "won't just be more efficient, they'll be more equitable. By designing technology that communities can own, operate, and benefit from, we create not just clean energy, but economic opportunity." In the audience, Miguel beamed with pride while Carlos and Elena held hands, their faces reflecting the wonder of parents watching their children exceed every dream they dared to have. The judges' questions were technical and challenging, but Sophia handled them with the same combination of expertise and empathy that had made her brother such an effective advocate for community-centered solutions. "Miss Santos," one judge asked, "what do you see as the biggest challenge facing renewable energy adoption in underserved communities?" Sophia's answer was immediate and thoughtful. "The biggest challenge isn't technical, it's trust. Communities that have been overlooked or exploited by traditional energy companies need to see that new approaches are different. They need to be partners in the solution, not just recipients of it." After the presentation, as the Santos family celebrated Sophia's acceptance to MIT's graduate program in environmental engineering, Khalid reflected on the ripple effects of that November evening when Miguel first picked up a marker. The Community Energy Division now employed over 200 people across 15 cities, most of them from the communities they served. Miguel had completed his engineering degree and was pursuing a joint MBA and policy degree at Harvard and MIT. Sophia would begin her graduate studies in the fall, focusing on energy justice and community development. But the numbers that mattered most to Khalid were different. 50,000 households now had access to reliable, affordable, renewable energy through community microgrids. I found 200 young people had completed technical training programs that led to well-paying jobs in the clean energy economy. 85 small businesses had opened or expanded because of reliable power access. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother in Dubai. Saw the CNN story about Sophia's scholarship. Your father says to tell you he understands now why you turned down the oil ministry position. Some solutions are worth more than money. As the celebration continued around him, Khalid thought about the speech he'd given at the UN Climate Summit 6 months earlier. The audience had expected a presentation about technology and economics. Instead, he'd talked about a young man who saw an equation and thought about his grandmother, about a family that understood that knowledge without purpose is just noise, about communities that had taught him that the most powerful solutions are the ones that emerge from genuine partnership. The question isn't how to scale renewable energy technology, he'd concluded. And the question is how to scale the wisdom to use that technology in service of human dignity and community empowerment. The speech had been viewed over 2 million times online, not because it offered easy answers, but because it offered something rarer, hope grounded in evidence that different approaches were possible. Now, as Khalid prepared to return to Boston for the Community Energy Division's annual conference, he reflected on how much had changed since that night when Miguel solved an equation that had stumped experts. The $50 million had been invested, the technology had been deployed, and the model had been scaled. But the real solution had been simpler and more profound, the recognition that brilliance comes in many forms, that the most important problems are often invisible to those with the most resources, and that true innovation happens when different kinds of wisdom come together in service of shared values. The plane lifted off from Phoenix as the sun set over the Sonoran Desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that reminded Khalid of the desert sunsets of his childhood. He opened his laptop and began composing an email to his board of directors, updating them on the Community Energy Division's expansion plans and Miguel's latest innovations in grid optimization. But as he typed, his mind drifted to the equation that had started it all, now framed on the wall of the Santos family's new home in Cambridge, where Miguel lived while completing his graduate studies. The mathematical symbols had become a family heirloom, a reminder that solutions often come from unexpected places and that the most important questions are the ones that ask not just how, but for whom. If stories of unexpected brilliance and community transformation resonate with you, consider how you might look differently at the overlooked talent in your own community. Sometimes the most profound innovations come not from the most credentialed minds, but from those who understand what it means to need the solutions they create. As the plane descended toward Boston, Khalid could see the lights of the city spreading out below him like a constellation of possibility. Somewhere in that grid of streets and neighborhoods, Miguel was working on the next generation of community energy systems. Sophia was preparing for graduate school, and Carlos was finishing his shift, knowing that his children had found ways to light up the world that he had never imagined possible. Tomorrow, Khalid would visit the original community microgrid in East Boston, now a model that delegations from around the world came to study. He would check in with the newest program sites, review applications for the next round of community partnerships, and continue the work of proving that the most sustainable solutions are the ones that serve both people and planet. But tonight, as the wheels touched down on the runway and Boston welcomed him home, Khalid simply felt grateful for the equation that had brought him to Miguel, for the family that had taught him about purpose, and for the discovery that true wealth is measured not in what you accumulate, but in what you help others build together. The work continues, one community at a time, one family at a time, one moment of recognition at a time. Because in the end, that's how change really happens, not through grand gestures or massive interventions, but through the patient, persistent choice to see brilliance wherever it appears and to create conditions where that brilliance can flourish in service of the common good. If you've been moved by this story of unexpected partnership and community empowerment, consider supporting educational opportunities for first-generation college students or community-based renewable energy initiatives in your area. The next breakthrough might come from someone whose potential has been overlooked, waiting for the chance to show what they can contribute to solving the challenges we all face together.